Okay, good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Burns, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly online event where we cover anything that may be of interest to librarians. We do all sorts of topics here, presentations, book reviews, mini training sessions, I'd say. We only go for an hour. We have commission staff that do sessions, as we were doing today. We also do bring in guest speakers sometimes, but today it's all Nebraska Library Commission staff. We do these sessions live every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, and they are recorded. So if you're unable to attend one of our live sessions, that's not a problem. You can always watch one of our recordings that is available excuse me, on our website. This morning, we are going to be talking about, as you can see, the census. The new 1940 census that came out
April 2nd.
April 2nd, very new, yeah. We have three staff here, as you can see on the list there, from the Library Commission who are going to take us through using it, how you use it, what it's all about. Yeah, anything you need to know, I guess. In an hour. Let's see how that goes.
Yes.
They say it could take 3 hours, but it's okay. Nobody panic. Nobody panic. We're not going to be here for 3 hours.
We'll try to restrain ourselves.
So I'm going to just hand it over to you guys and let you go. Are you up first?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Devra Dragos, and I'd like to preface our presentation this morning by saying that Beth, Allana, and I are not experts in the 1940 census, but we were really excited to see it, and we would like to share some of the things that we've discovered about the census and some records that are available to help aid in searching the census. Most of the examples and some of the resources that we do focus on this morning are going to be Nebraska related, but you can apply the information to practically any of the states. As we just said a minute ago, the entire 1940 census did become available on April 2nd of this year. Prior to that, we only had reports showing cumulated numbers because of the 72-year rule, which says that the government cannot release personally identifiable information about an individual until 72 years after it's been collected. The greatest excitement, I think, for these records was from the genealogists, because the information because of all of the information that can be found about each person living in the United States in April of 1940. But this information could be of great interest to many groups, especially educational groups. You know, it could be historian, people who research history, research sociology, but even elementary students could find something fun to learn about their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, whatever. The National Archives, which manages the census records, has not indexed the records by name, and they will not be doing that. The whole indexing project is being done by volunteers, many of them from genealogical societies. Oops.
Click on the slide first.
Okay, there we go. So what we wanted to show you first is the family search site. As you can see by this map, a great deal of the name indexing has been completed already, and here in Nebraska, 45% has been done. They do have a Help Now button. It's all volunteers, as I said. The Family Search site is run by the Church of the Latter-day Saints, and access to these resources are totally free on this site. I did want to point out there are several different groups that are sponsoring this project, and for those of you who are from Nebraska, you'll notice ProQuest is one of the sponsors. The Library Commission does subscribe to ProQuest's Heritage Quest Online for all Nebraska residents. ProQuest has said that they will be adding the census records on a rolling basis as states are completed with the name indexing. They will not load the census records before name indexing progresses a bit further, though. Okay, back up to the top here. I also wanted to point out that there are several states that are 100% indexed, but they are not available for searching by name quite yet, because there is a verification procedure that has to be carried out first. However, there are a few that are in burnt orange here that you can see: Oregon, Colorado, Kansas, New Hampshire, Delaware, and Virginia that are searchable. And I'll just go ahead and do a quick search in Virginia. And Beth and Allana already know who I'm going to search for. So we'll see if Krista, who wasn't in on it, can figure out who this family is that we're searching for. I'm going to search for Ira Beatty.
No, you told me you mentioned it.
Oh, I
yesterday.
did. Sorry.
I'm not
Okay.
gonna
Well, you can give yourself a pat on the back if you can figure out who this family is. We did come up with a result, Ira Beatty. So we'll click on that. And as you can see, the result gives you some of the information from the actual census record, but then it also gives you information about how to find this particular record within the census documents. And we'll be talking more about things like enumeration district numbers and those type of things in a little bit. But I did want to point out down below that they do give you the names of everybody that was in the household for the person that you searched for. And you'll notice that Ira had 2 children, Shirley and Henry W. And if you haven't guessed by now, Shirley McLean was 5 years old in 1940, and her brother Warren Beatty was 3. But as you saw on that map, not very many states are name indexed. For those, you do have to search by location. So now I'm going to go to our website, the Library Commission's Nebraska Access website, and show you some of the things that we have done to help people search and interpret the Nebraska census records. So Beth now is actually first going to talk about the actual census forms and questions.
I'm doing it. Get it ready if you want to. You can click on whatever you want, or if you want me to, I can.
Okay, this is Beth. I'm going to talk a little bit about basically how they conducted the census in 1940 and how it's changed over the years, and point out a few things that I found interesting. So we're going to take a look at what the census form looked like in 1940. Okay, I want to
Oh, there.
Here. Alana's going to navigate for me because that's not the page I wanted to show you. The template, of course. Right. Just keep driving. Okay, as you can probably imagine, in 1940, it was all done with enumerators. They really didn't do things by mail then, and there were 123,000 and change enumerators back then, and everything was on this one form. So, of course, the enumerator would come to your door. The enumerator would be hanging onto the form and then asking questions of the people that were there. So everybody was asked the questions that you see in the upper left, the top part there. And
So enumerator is what they used to call like census takers?
Yes.
And that's what
Yes.
we call them now.
Yes.
They changed the name of them?
Mm-hmm. So, and I'm assuming that they got paid a little bit to do this. The last time we used enumerators, I think was in the Census 2000, and they were definitely paid to enumerate. So these are probably neighborhood folks, and I think either Allana or Devra is going to be talking later about the enumeration districts and how much territory an enumerator could cover. But anyway, they would ask general questions like your name and address, the relationship of all the residents at a particular place, their level of education, their place of birth, and their citizenship. So everybody got asked that. There were a couple of new questions as of 1940, and they had a little section there on housing. I think it's a little bit to your left, up and to your left. Oops. Yeah, scroll up. Household data. That was something new for 1940, so genealogists can probably find more information, things they might not have known before, such as Was the home owned or rented? What was its value? If it was rented, what was the monthly rental amount they got? So that'd be, I think, be interesting to someone tracing their family history. There was also a new question, and it's actually way over to the right at the top here. Your residence on April 1st, 1935. That was a new question. And I think it was probably, it's about internal migration. And that is something that I think has been tracked ever since, but it would have been particularly important in 1940 because of the Depression and the number of people who were on the move or had to move because of their economic conditions, losing their jobs, losing their land and whatnot. So that question was added. Okay, then going down a little further, there's another section of the form. If you were 14 years old and over, these questions, additional questions were asked about people that were that age. And there were some new questions. Again, I think the Depression brought a lot of this on about working. Were you actually working? Were you seeking work? Were you unemployed? And for the first time, and I think it's over to the right, there was a question about what your income is. And Devra has told me that not very many people responded to that question for whatever reason. Either they didn't want to admit that they weren't working, or they didn't want to admit they were making how much they were making. So interesting. And of course, we think that's fairly routine now, but this was the first time somebody was actually asked that question. Okay, then at the bottom part of the form, or actually the next page, yeah, if you're, the enumerator, of course, would have had this. So on the back side of what the enumerator, the sheet the enumerator was using, or the template, you have these supplemental questions. And the way they did this was people that initial sheet that I inadvertently clicked on that I said wasn't the one I wanted to look at, that was the tabulation sheet that the enumerator was using. And it was a random sample, so whichever name appeared on line 14 and whichever name appeared on line 29, those people would be asked these additional questions. So it was kind of the first use of what we now think of as the long form. And about 5% of people got these additional questions. So they were asked things like, what was your parents' place of birth? What was your mother tongue? In other words, what language was spoken at home when you were a small child? Was it English or something else? So there was a place where the enumerator could write that in. Questions about veteran status were in there. Questions about Social Security, and actually as a person who wasn't born in this country, I didn't realize that Social Security went back this many years. I had assumed it didn't come until the 60s, but evidently
It started in the 1930s.
1930s. Okay, something else probably started by Franklin Roosevelt then. So if you were over age 14, you got asked about Social Security, and then I found this one interesting too. On the far right, married women, and notice it says it is married women, were asked about how many times they've been married and how many children they have. Evidently, they didn't want to know about unmarried women who might have had children. So times have changed. And I just found it interesting that one question that you would have seen on your short form for 2010 was, what is your phone number? That question's not on here because not as many people had phones. You'll see lots more from us about the phone books. But okay, if you look at the very bottom there is a list of symbols. This was the information the enumerator had to use to figure out some things. So, for example, the question about race. There were certain codes that the enumerator could use, shorthand, for these particular ones. And I did find it interesting, again, that Hindu is listed as a race. We wouldn't do that now because that's really a religion, not a race. But back then, I'm sure it meant, are you from the Indian subcontinent or something like that. Age at last birthday. People were asked what their age was at their last birthday, but there was a little chart there that the enumerator could use for babies who were less than a year old. So these were this is how they would figure out what to write in based on what they were told. If we back up to our page, there's a better chart that's easier to figure out. And I don't know, Len, if you want to talk about this for a minute, or this is a little easier to deal with than what you saw in that form. So that if you're looking at the actual enumeration sheet, it'll help you figure out what some of those codes mean. Okay, yeah, let's go back a little bit, and just a little brief information about how things have changed. In 1960 was when they started doing mail-outs. The enumerator would actually come and pick it up from you, but it was mailed to you. They were, by that time, using kind of a short form, long form. In 1970 was the first time we were asked about Hispanic origin. And then to get up into the more recent years, by 2000, we had all these different check boxes that you could use to self-identify your race, because now there isn't an enumerator working with you very often. You're expected to fill all this out yourself and be able to mail it back. And by 2010, we had a very short form with only 10 questions, but it did have 15 different check boxes related to what your race is. And no long form. You're probably aware of that nobody got what was called a long form, but we now have something called the American Community Survey, where every year a percentage of the population gets a very detailed booklet of questions that's 11 pages long, and it's got a 16-page guide on how to fill it out. So that's how that's done. Now, if we could go and look at this is just the top part of one of the tables from the 1940 census. So this is what it looked like. This table was actually several pages long, and I'm not going to really spend a lot of time on it, but it gives you an idea of how if you look over on the right-hand side, it does show you what the major categories of race were in those days, and it gives you an indication of how things have changed. And I'm not saying that they never went into any more depth about race in other tables, but this was a common way of grouping people. Were you native white or foreign-born white? Were you Negro or were you some other race?
And this was the only information that was released right after the census was taken. This cumulative type of information, not the individual information.
Yeah. And I think that's probably about all I have to say. So I'll move it on to Allana. Actually, Devra. Go back to Devra.
Yeah. I have just a few more things here to talk about. Until Nebraska is completely name indexed, as we said, searches will need to be done based on location. For censuses in earlier years, each state was divided up into geographic areas that could be covered by one census taker or enumerator within a census period. In 1940, a census period was 10 days for an urban area and 30 days for rural areas. Each of these geographic areas was then called an enumeration district and was plotted on a census map. In urban areas, an enumeration district could fill up 40, 50, 60, maybe even more of those census forms that Beth just showed you, and larger towns had multiple enumeration districts. For example, Omaha had over 200, so you can imagine what New York City is like. It could be a really major project to find someone if you don't know what their address was at that time. So to help those searching for Nebraska residents until our census records are name indexed, we decided to digitize as many white pages from telephone directories as possible, even though we realize not everyone in 1940 had a telephone. We limited the project to white pages because that information is not copyrighted, but you can also check with local libraries or historical societies for city directories or other documentation that might give you a lead to addresses. Here in Nebraska, we did have some success in tracking down existing 1940s phone books, or in one case, 1938 phone book. And you can see we did get our two major cities, Omaha and Lincoln, and a few others. And we would like to thank the libraries and the State Historical Society for lending us those documents to digitize. We'll take a quick, and also Allana did put in some information, some hints on using the census map once you have an address. We'll go into Omaha's phone book here for a minute. And you'll notice Allana was really nice and broke up the phone book in alphabetical order, but I'm going to scroll down to the bottom first and talk just a little bit more about enumeration districts. The enumeration districts were given hyphenated numbers. As you can see here, you've got a 2815, a 94, or 28-15, and a 94-74. The number before the hyphen in most states either represents a county or a large city, and the number after the hyphen represents the smaller area that was covered by each enumerator. In Nebraska, only one city, Omaha, has its own number, the 94. The 28 is the county, which is the county that Omaha is in. Because of the map size and how the number of enumeration districts that they had to cram into the just a few block area, the 94 hyphen is not written in for each enumeration district on that map like it is on the other maps. So the researcher has to remember to include that. Okay. Also in cities, some institutions, such as the ones listed here, or large apartment buildings could be enumeration districts in and of themselves. And these are often listed as a key in the corner of a census map. But because Omaha has so many pages and pages and pages of maps, Allana collected all the numbers and included them on this one page. And you'll see, you have educational institutions, you have the county jail, you have hospitals, religious orders, just various different types of institutions. Could be its own enumeration district. Okay, I'm going to go back up and actually do a search in the white pages. These white pages have been OCR'd, although there aren't too many pages in any one of them, so it is pretty simple to scroll through. But I'll go ahead and do a search here on Buffett, and since we know Warren Buffett's father's name was Howard, we can identify the family's address as 2501 North 53rd. And Allana is now going to search for the Buffett family using this address.
Krista, do you have any questions that came in before we move on?
Nope.
Oh, good.
But no, if you have questions,
No.
feel free to enter them, to type them in, we'll answer them. But no,
That is true. I only said, oh, good, because I'm the person that said I could talk for 3 hours. So, as Devra said, I am going to use this information now to track down Warren Buffett and his parents in the 1940 census. And I'll tell you right up front, there's probably about 101 different ways I could go about doing this. So I'm going to show you a couple, but by no means am I showing you probably the only ways you can do it, or maybe even the best way to do it. I am going to be jumping kind of back and forth between a PowerPoint and the live session here, or screen, just because it's a little easier sometimes to pull the stuff up in a PowerPoint and show you than try to show it on the screen. So as Devra was already nice enough to do, she did locate the Buffett family in the phone book. And so now we know, as Devra said, Warren Buffett's father's name was Howard, and we know that they did live on North 53rd Street in Omaha, which is located in Douglas County, Nebraska. So I'm going to go ahead now and jump out to the actual census site that's maintained by the National Archives and show you how I can go about and locate the Buffett family here. So first thing I'm going to do is go down here and get started. I'm going to skip the part about reading here and jump on down and start my search. And I forgot to show you one other slide here. Let me jump back for a second. When I have an address, I find it easier for myself, especially if I don't know the town very well, to just pull up the map of the address I'm after. In this case, you can see from my screenshot, I just used Google Maps, and I was able to locate the Buffett family house here on 53rd Street. It's between Miami and Lake. And so that way I actually kind of have an idea of where the address is I'm after. So now I'm jumping back again to the National Archives site where I can do a search. They actually call it a browse at this point. So I'm going to go down and go to Nebraska. And I am in Douglas County. I am in Omaha. You can see here I do have options, some other options. East Omaha, Homestead, Omaha, and West Benson. So again, this could be a little confusing if you haven't figured out exactly where your person in that address is. And then I do have an option of doing a street. And since we do know the Buffett family lived on 53rd Street, I will select that and start my search. So now I come back with a lot of information here. And you do see this nice yellow box that says add a cross street to 53rd. That can be useful. I will add Miami because as I was showing you on the map before, that is one of the cross streets. And I do want to point out here at the top, you can see I have map, description, and census schedule. So right now I'm looking at the census schedules and there's two of them. At first glance you think, oh, that's not too bad to look at, but then you notice that one of these schedules has 46 pages and the other has 52. I have to tell you that is a lot of census schedules to look at. It's a lot of handwriting to try to read. So what I'm actually going to do is go to the maps and bring up the map of the Omaha area. Whoops. And I did click on the description link here. It does show you the descriptions of the different enumeration districts. And I have to say what they have for the Omaha area is not very helpful. I have seen other ones. I was looking up Johnny Carson, and the description of the enumeration district that he lived in was much more useful. It clearly gave street boundaries of the district. So again, that information is going to vary, it seems like, from location to location. I'm going to jump back to the map now and view the map. And you can see here, if you notice before I clicked, this map is actually 8 pages long. Now, trying to navigate these maps, I find to be a bit of a challenge. Let me see if I can start finding the text here as I'm scrolling through this map. Obviously, I didn't quite. It's about right. There we go. And I just wanted to point this little information out that's on this corner of the maps of, since Devra mentioned it. Here's where I actually found on this corner of the map, if you can read this really big text here, it says all ED Ds preceded by 94. And it says EDs 94 to 94.1 to 94-204 are separate EDs here. And then they actually do, here's this list that Devra pointed out that we had typed up on our website that does again mention some of the places that have their own separate ED districts. Now back to finding the Buffett family. I will tell you, this is where it kind of gets a bit challenging because as you can see, this map is just so big and kind of awkward to move around. For me personally, I like to go up here to download, and I can download these maps to my local computer and work with them. For me, it's just so much easier than trying to maneuver around here and try to find where I'm looking for. Just in the fact I'm trying to save a bit of time here, I will tell you, like I said, there's 8 pages. The Buffett family actually appears on page 3 of this map. Again, you can see here, it's kind of a bit of a challenge. I'm actually going to jump over to PowerPoint again and just show you that I did a screenshot here of, whoops, of the part of the map that I mentioned. This is actually page 3 of the map. And I finally located the Warren Buffett house. It's right here where the X is. This particular map, I have to say, was one of the harder maps I've tried to read because, as you can see here, it's really hard to make out any street names and numbers. Over here, I could make out some of them, but when I got over here, it was getting a little iffy. On this particular map, what finally kind of gave me a clue is where I was at, is you can see how these streets kind of form this funky connection and Y almost, or X here. And I was able to look and find that on the Google map and go, oh, okay, that's where I'm at, so I knew I was in the right place.
Yay for Google Maps. Satellite imagery.
You know, that helped. So, and then I also, you can see that yellow line here is something I added simply because I didn't think I'd be able to point out during this presentation very well. This black line, which actually outlines the ED district here, the enumeration district. So you can see, even after you find the house, it's a bit of a challenge trying to look at, you know, what black line is the outline of the district as opposed to a street, or sometimes they even have other different districts and things marked on these maps. So, and then in the middle of it, you'll see that I also highlighted the number 183. That actually is the enumeration district number. So again, that can be sometimes a challenge to find. You can see some of these over here, you know, the 181, the 178, 185. And then this goes back to what Devra had mentioned again before, that remember the 183 is only part of the number, since in Omaha they did not write the full ED district number. The actual ED district I'm after now for the Buffett family is going to be 94-183. So now that I have that magic number, I am going to go back to the Census Live again. I'm going to close the map that I was looking at. And now I'm actually going to Census Schedules. And that's not the one I want.
Do you want the enumeration district instead of location? You want an enumeration district. Is that how you were going to do it?
No.
Or you want lake as a cross street?
This is when a good search example goes bad. Actually, I'm just going to remove this, it all together here. I just went back and did the 53rd Street. I'm going to go find the enumeration district I want here. I do want the 94-183. And it's right here. I'm not quite sure what happened to the example. Like I said, it was a good example gone bad. So here is now an actual page of the census. And again, you can see this is pretty large. At this point, we have 46 pages, and we have no idea where the Buffett family is. So to find them, you literally have to look line by line. So you can either look at the name in the name field here, or they also then write along the left-hand side here, you can see this is the name of the street. So sometimes you can just look at the name of the street and find the address. And sometimes that works well, and sometimes it doesn't work well either. So
I have a question. Because these are handwritten and they probably, this was microfilm that was filmed, these are not OCR'd in any way where you could...
Correct. You cannot
search on Buffett somehow.
No, because that's the point of the whole naming project,
Yeah.
is you can't search on any of this stuff. You have to literally
So
scroll
even though
through.
you have now found the right district, you're still going to have to go through it.
You have to go through 46 pages to find them.
Until that naming project is done, and then
You can
hopefully
search for it.
then
Yep.
you'll be able to- So yeah, it's a work in progress.
And it would actually then tell you what line.
Yes.
Right.
That is the goal of the indexing project.
Right. And you never know with an enumerator how they went around the block. If they went up and down streets one way and then did the, came back down the same street, or if they went around a block, or everyone did something different.
If any of you ever had to hand out flyers with your kids for some project, you do whatever you have to get it done as quickly as possible.
I found one census grouping that I was looking at last night. I really think the numerator skipped the houses where they weren't home, and then towards the end she went back and got the ones that were home. So I was, you're going along the blocks and it looks really good, but then you're missing houses, and then you kind of find them at the end. So it's not easy. I will not take the time to go through and look for all of these, because I will tell you the Buffett family, I did find them on page 11. And in this particular site here, there is no easy way to jump to page 11. You really have to sit here and keep going next. And again, as you can imagine, that takes a bit of time. Again, you do have the option up here to download. And again, if I know I'm going to be looking through all 43 of these, I sometimes find it easier to download them. And you do have the option of just the current page you're looking at, or all images. So again, your choice of how you like to work through them. If you do find them on this website, just for me personally, I would always try to make note of which image number I found it on, so that way, if I actually did find Grandma or Grandpa, I can go back and, tell my sister to go to the site and actually tell her what page to go to, because after you print them off, you don't have that page number. You can look at some of the information on the census sheet and try to figure it out, but it's just easier if you grab that little magic page number from the beginning. I am going to jump back to PowerPoint again and show you what I found on the Buffett family, just because I think it's really hard to look at this information in this setting here. So here is what the complete sheet looks like with for the Buffett family. As you can probably guess, the highlighted yellow is where I actually found the Buffett family. And this kind of is a point where I wanted to mention the fact that how Beth showed you the blank census form, how they can be really helpful, because you're trying to read across the screen and figure out what column is what, so you actually know what that information is. It can be a bit tricky. Here on the next screen, I actually sort of cheated a bit. As you can see, I sort of chopped up the census page and moved it up, so you can see now that I have, under the names here, here's the Buffett family. You can see there is Warren. He was 9 at the time of the census. I also want to point out this little circle with the X. That is supposed to designate the person who provided the information. Again, it's sort of going to be a hit and miss. Last night I was looking at a form where there was a little circle and X next to everybody, so it looks like everybody in the family, was able to provide their own information. So I'm not sure about, I didn't look at the ages of the kids, I probably should have, but everyone in the family had the little circle and the X. Also, I was looking at one of my own relatives in the census, and not a single person had a circle and the X next to it, so I really have no clue who gave the information. And then on another one I was looking at, it looked like the numerator was trying to be very nice, and she had handwritten in the margins that this information was provided by, and then she listed a name, so it must not have been a family member. It was a neighbor, yeah, but that's not really part of the directions. But again, handwritten on the side was the fact of who she got the information from. So who knows how they're going to handle that when they start doing indexing and things like that. But like I said, I can only tell you what they're supposed to do. I'm just going to quickly go through here. Again, this is just still going across the columns for the Warren Buffett or the Buffett family at this point in time. I should mention, and backing up here a page, you can see they did tell you what their house was worth in 1940. And they did own it. And I'm not going to go through all this in just detail. If you guys want to learn more about Warren, you're going to have to go out and search and find it yourself and read it. But I did want to just point out some of the information that's available. It does say his father was a proprietor and he was in bond investment. So looks like Warren stayed in the family business.
And then some.
I am going to jump back again to the website. And I'm checking my notes here to make sure I didn't forget to tell you anything. I do want to mention that you do have the option of adding a bookmark. I will tell you right now, I learned the hard way that you actually have to create an account with the National Archives if you want that bookmark to stay around. I set bookmarks one day, I came back the next day and they were all gone. I learned that lesson, so now I have an account. So when I do set bookmarks, I am keeping them. Let me close this then. And show you a couple other things. I did want to point out, I'm going to jump back to the family search. This is the one that Devra was showing us earlier about the Beatty family. Since these are public records, that you are going to see a number of other companies and organizations are providing access to these same 1940 census records. Some of them are going to make you register before you see them, just because they are bigger sites that actually are, for a profit business and trying to, make money and sell you some other things. So that will come up. On the family search site here, they do make these records available without making you log in or pay anything. And I did want to show you on, here's, like I said, here's the one Devra was showing us, and they do have a link to view the image. And they actually use a slightly different image viewer to look at these census records. And in some ways, I think this viewer is a little easier to use when it's working. It was earlier today, but... Here we go. So you can see now here is how Family Search presents the 1940 census. They actually do have these zoom options. Nice. And I can just use my mouse to drag around. So that's how they made them available. And I have to say that's a little easier for me to use. And they also, yeah, that's always nice too when the handwriting's better. They do actually have an option you can invert it to. Some people think it's easier to read the white on black instead of the black on white. But like I said, that's a little something else to consider and use if you're interested. I am going to go back to the National Archives website and show you a couple other things here. Let me back up here and show you another way to search. Now, if you are lucky enough to already have the enumeration district, maybe someone, you found it on a website somewhere, or a friend or relative have sent it to you, you can go in here and select a state. And then you can enter an ED number. I just want to mention here that I have ran across some enumeration districts. This isn't one of them, of course, but that would be like 1320-27A, and then there's like a 13-27B. I just tried entering it without the A or B, thinking I'd get both of them. That didn't work for me. I had to enter the A or the B in order to get them. You can see now that was really easy if I had the enumeration district. Now I'm down to, I pulled up the particular census schedule I wanted in Cass County, and then I could easily open it and go through each individual page. That's the main part of the things I wanted to show you on this National Archives website. Krista, is there any questions before I move on? Okay. I do want to show you a few other sites that might be of use. I am going to go to a site here from a gentleman called Steve Morris. And this is a website he has put together to help people locate folks in the 1940 census. Let me show you here walking through. Let me do Warren Buffett again. So I'm going to go back to Nebraska, and then we are in Douglas County, and you can see here now I only have the choice of Omaha, And it actually does ask for a house number and a street number. And I don't notice it as I'm typing. You'll see here's all the ED locations that match what I've been typing in. So the Buffett family was at 2501 on 53rd Street. 53rd Street, and you can see now I'm down to still quite a few different corresponding ED districts. But the next question here is asked for a cross or back street at the same city block. So as I was typing in earlier, Miami is one of the streets that border it. And so now at this point you can see here I actually am down to 2 enumeration districts. But it does give me the option to enter another cross or back street. So I know Lake is on the other side of that particular block. And so now at this point I am down to 1 nice ED district, and this example worked perfectly, of course, and I could have, you know, wouldn't have to look at the map if I had known this information ahead of time. That said, it always doesn't work quite as nice. Let me reset this form here. And let me go back and look for another person, Beth Streeter Aldrich. She actually lives in the small town of Elmwood, Nebraska. So again, I'm going to jump down to Nebraska. And that particular town is in Cass County. And now when you can see here, when I want to enter a city or town, I don't have any options just because of how the site was set up and the information they've contributed to it. I can go ahead and say other, and then I can type in Elmwood. But you can see at no point am I able to enter a house or street number because they just don't have that information available. And here at this point now, it narrowed me down to 4 different enumeration districts to look at, and that would be way too much. So at this point I would be much better going in and looking at the map and finding the town of Elmwood, and using that method to identify the actual enumeration district that I want to look at, which I do know from, as you can imagine, I looked this up, it was the 1327 where she's located at. You do have the option here, you can see after I found someone, to click on the 1940 ED number, and I can either see the census page or the description. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you this here for a second. What Steve Morris on his site actually did is all 4 of these links in here in the middle will take you to the actual census page, but I have to kind of put a big note on this part here because the first one is the National Archives. That's the site I've been showing you the most. You can get in there in free and see it. The Family Search Viewer is another one that you can get in and see without doing anything else. But a couple of these other ones, when you go to them, they're actually going to ask you to register, and they want to get basically your contact information. So personal choice if you want to do that. I just want to point out that there are some of these that are available here without having to do that, or you may run into that also being prompted for your personal information. Checking my time here. As I said, I could probably talk for 3 hours on this. So let me go and show you one other way you can go about finding additional information here. I'm going to type in this URL here. And this is a particular page on the National Archives website. This page is actually going to help you if you do have the ED district from 1930 census. It will take it and give you what the ED district is in 1940. There's a couple big catches to this, even as I'm saying this. First of all, the person you're looking for has to have lived in the same house between 1930 and 1940. If they moved, it's not going to do you much good. So let me go ahead and type in Howard and Buffett, and you do have to do a first and last name. And I should point out here that this actually, they do note, even though this is a government site, they note that this page here is actually powered by archives.com, which is a for-profit website. And you'll see why that I pointed that out here in a second. So let me go ahead and search for Howard. So we can see we did find a Howard Buffett, and it does tell me what the ED district was in 1930. I have a link to see more. There is this sort of teaser to see the 1930s page, but when you go to that again, you're prompted to join the archives.com website, which is the company that's nice enough to provide us this information. But then you can also then view the 1940 EDs, which you can see now the mapping from 1930 to 1940 didn't quite match up. So what was one ED in the 1930 census is now 2 EDs in 1940. So you're still looking at 62 pages to look through. So again, is that helpful or not helpful? I don't know. And besides that, actually they did. Yeah, Devra's stepping over my words here. Yeah, Devra, as you noticed here, if you actually look at the ED districts, the Buffett family has moved in that time being. So
183 is not there.
Yeah.
187, whichever one.
Yeah, so not only are you would have 2 ED districts to look through, you would find them. But again, I do have some relatives that live on the same farm for quite a while, so they haven't moved. So in this case, this would be helpful because I know they hadn't moved. But they also live on a farm in the middle of nowhere, so I have to say when you try to have those folks in an area where everybody has 10 kids, it's much easier to find people than it is when you're looking in Omaha where you have lots of people in small ED districts and 40 or 50 pages of census information to look through. I think that's the major things I wanted to talk about. I could go, like I said, I had some more search examples, but we're getting close to the top of our hour here. Krista, did you have any items you wanted to show or questions?
No questions have come in. If you do have any questions, go ahead and type them into the question section. Questions, comments, ideas, suggestions, whatever, and we can answer them.
Try.
We can try. That's supposed to be May past or my past?
My past. That's what you get for typing, live.
Oh, yeah, there you go. You had comments.
Oh. I thought I'd just end on this because I thought it was pure fun, as Devra mentioned, how different ways you could use the census. This is one of the many companies that are obviously promoting the 1940 census, but they just highlighted some famous folks across the country you might recognize and find that are in the 1940 census. Dick Clark, Martin Luther King Jr., there's James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, Walt Disney, Shirley Temple, the Fonda family, Chuck Norris,
Boris Karloff.
Boris Karloff, Charlie Chaplin, Fred Astaire, and Ginger Rogers, Tina Turner. So, like I said, some of those are just kind of fun, but I wanted to point them out. Okay.
We do have a question. What OCR software did you use?
For the phone
For
books?
you guys,
For the
what did
phone
you
books.
guys use?
I have no idea which particular ones we are using on our scanner.
I know it, I can't say it. We have the whole suite of the, is
We-
it part
we
of
We can look chat.
We can
and
find
get
that later and get back to them if they would like, but I don't know off the top of my
Is
head.
it part of the Adobe
Yes,
suite?
it is.
It's a part
Okay.
of the Adobe suite.
And it's the more expensive.
We have information. Lori is down
Lori's
here.
there.
I
Yep.
almost shouted that
Yes.
out. Lori, are you watching
She
this?
is watching, and she
Or
says
mine?
that we're using Adobe. Yes.
And Lori's the one that did the scanning, so thanks, Lori.
So there are two ways to do this. You can scan it right to PDF, or you can scan it to TIFF and then convert it to PDF.
Yep.
But either way, you can end up with a searchable document. But those were printed, and the quality, of course, depends on how well some of those phone books were in relatively good shape. Others were just really terrible, and the paper quality was a big factor. And we're so grateful for the libraries that donated their phone books for this project.
Yeah, one phone book did not survive surgery, but
But
the rest of them did.
And the lender did get copies on CD of what they had given us, so that if they had a very fragile one, or that will probably have a lot of library patrons coming in and look at those 1940 phone books, they can mount the digitized version on a server someplace and let people use that instead of digging the old one out of a box.
Any more questions, Krista?
That's it for now at the moment.
Okay, well, we hope you all have fun doing your own searches on the 1940 census or helping your patrons
And
doing
then
searches.
just a final shout out to Lori Sailors, was the person who helped us out with that question. She is the one who actually did all of that, all but one of those phone book scans. Bonnie Hensel scanned one of them as well.
If anybody has any last minute questions, go ahead and get them typed in before we wrap up. If not, you can always contact Beth, Allana, and Devra here. You guys know where to find them. And they can help you out with it. We've got some good jobs, and they'll be sharing this information with other people. The session was recorded, so you will be able to watch it later or pass it on to anyone else who wasn't able to watch it. And all of the websites that were mentioned and linked to and used here, I have added to the Library Commission's Delicious account, so that will also be made available when the recording is up as well, so you'll be able to get to all those pages that we were sharing stuff on. Even that last fun one with all of the people who were in there, the famous people, I went and added that one while we were sitting here, so you got quick access to that one as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending and you guys for presenting this. This is good to know now what we can do with this, and hopefully in the future it'll be so much easier when all that name indexing is done. And maybe whenever that is finished, we'll come back and do an update session.
I have a question for if she's still around. I noticed that one of our viewers today is a friend of ours from the Historical Society, and she's also a genealogist. And I'm wondering, Cindy, are you participating are you a volunteer for the name indexing?
She is on. Cindy Drake, did you hear that? Beth wants to know if you were volunteering and doing anything with the name indexing yourself. Waiting to see if she answers.
While we're waiting for Cindy to answer,
She says no, she is not.
She's not. Okay. One of the reasons that it's taking a while for the states who are 100% done to be made available is that there were actually 2 volunteers for every single census record doing indexing, and those 2 results then have to be cross-proofed against each other. Mm-hmm. And if there's any difference between the 2, then sort of a third judge has to make the decision as to which one to accept. Mm-hmm. So, and they're short of that third person. They do not have enough people to do that. So, because they do have to have some special qualifications. They have to have more experience. Mm-hmm. So that some of the states are taking a little bit longer to be made available.
You can only imagine how many, was that an E or an O in that handwritten, especially on someone who's been doing it for multiple days and their handwriting got a little worse as the days gone on. And
it does seem to be in the past people had better penmanship in general than we do now, but it still varies. I know looking at it, you're still What do they mean by that? Yes. Okay, well, we're a little after 11 o'clock, so I think we don't have any other desperate questions at the moment or anything you guys need to add. We will wrap it up. So thank you very much for attending today and learning all about the 1940 census. And I just want to give a plug to next week's NCompass Live. I hope you'll join us for that, where Amy Mather from the Omaha Public Library will be joining us to talk about contextual outreach, making connections between what you're doing at your library and your patrons to figure out how to market your services and collections to them better, and the things that they have been doing at Omaha Public for that. So hope sign up for that next week. You can sign up right now on our website. And this session was recorded and will be up this afternoon, tomorrow, maybe this afternoon, and you'll be able to share it out to anyone you want to. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.